Welcome to week 3 of English 320 American Literature after 1865. This week, we move into naturalism, urbanization, and social critique. You will see how writers shift from describing the world to exposing the forces that shape it, including poverty, labor, immigration, rapid city growth, and the influence of money and social class. Let's begin. This week's objective is to understand what naturalism is testing. Naturalist writers keep asking how much control people really have when their lives are shaped by environment, heredity, and social forces. As we read, I want you to notice when the text treats choice as real agency and when it treats choice as constrained, pressured, or predetermined. As you move through this lecture, I encourage you to pause, take notes and screenshots, and actively engage the questions posed as they will help guide your written assignments. As we explore literary naturalism, I want you to hold on to one core idea. These texts often suggest that people are not shaped primarily by personal willpower, but by large forces that operate around them and sometimes through them. You will see three forces showing up again and again in our readings. First is the force of place. Pay attention to how the physical environment shapes what characters can do, what they can access, and even how they think. In Jack London especially, the setting is not background. It actively pressures the body and limits survival choices. Second is the force of the system. This includes money, labor, class, and institutions that treat people like numbers or resources. As you read, notice how characters are rewarded or punished based on social position, not necessarily on merit. Third is the force of ideology. These are the beliefs, myths, and cultural scripts that tell people who they should be and what success should look like. Naturalist texts often show how these ideas can trap people, even when they think they are choosing freely. As you move into London and Dreiser, I want you to track specific moments where a character's choices narrow. Ask yourself what force is doing the narrowing and what evidence the text gives you to prove it. Naturalism is all about determinism, the idea that our lives are shaped by forces we don't control. Environment equals where you are, heredity equals what you're born with, social forces equal the systems you live in. And these forces don't just influence the story, they drive it. This graphic will help you visualize how naturalism borrows the language of science to explain why characters fail. The main claim is that tragedy is not presented as a simple result of bad choices. It is presented as the outcome of forces that are bigger than the individual and often invisible until it's too late. Pause here and take a screenshot of this visual for your notes. In naturalism, setting is not just background, it's pressure. The key idea is that the environment can actually work against the character, and sometimes it wins. Pause here and read what to notice here, and review the discussion prompt. I want to use To Build a Fire as a quick case study in how naturalism treats the environment as an active pressure that can overwhelm intention. The story moves quickly, but the pattern is clear. The protagonist enters extreme cold, gets wet, tries to build and maintain a fire, and the environment steadily reduces his options. The cold is not just background, it functions like a set of rules that the character cannot negotiate with. So, on the surface, it might appear that man versus nature, and in this story, nature wins. But the real issue isn't just the cold, it's the lack of experience. He doesn't understand the environment he's in. Naturalism says knowledge isn't optional, it's survival. So when he fails to adapt, the environment doesn't forgive him. Pause here and take a good look at this graphic. Now consider this important question. What machine is the character caught inside? That machine could be environment, society, or both. Take a second to think about that. Now we move from nature to society. The idea is that naturalism treats social systems like forces of nature. Things like capitalism, work, and class shape how people live. Pause here for a moment and look through this graphic. The idea of fossil capital can be a little abstract, so let me clarify. The gist is this. The system is built around productivity, what you can produce and what you can earn. So your value becomes tied to your usefulness. Before we get into our second case study, let's review how Jack London's story explores how naturalism treats place as an active pressure, not just a background setting. The plot moves fast. A man travels in extreme cold, gets his feet wet, starts a fire, and then cannot keep it going. As his body numbs, he loses the ability to carry out his last plan, and he dies while the dog survives. What matters for our lens is why the story turns tragic. Naturalism keeps pointing to a mismatch between a person and a place. The environment does not negotiate, it sets the terms. When someone misreads those terms, the body pays the price. That is one of naturalism's blunt lessons. Intention and confidence do not override conditions. Now I want to shift from place as environment to place as a system that reorganizes everyday life. In this lens, what looks natural can actually be learned and enforced. Industrial capitalism reshapes the city around productivity and work, so daily routines, movement, and even ambition start to follow the system's logic. Now let's use Dreiser's Sister Carrie as another clear example of naturalism's method. Notice how the city Chicago is narrated like an autonomous force that reshapes people. Instead of emphasizing individual agency, the narration describes urban growth as if it spreads on its own, with infrastructures appearing and expanding across the prairie. That style can naturalize urbanization. It can make the city feel inevitable rather than made, and it can hide the human decisions that labor and actually build and maintain it. It also brings back the frontier idea in a new form. Not wilderness conquest, but urban industrial expansion, absorption, and control. As you read, find one moment when the narrator describes a social fact as if it were a law of nature. Then ask what choices, institutions, or power arrangements disappear when the story frames the system as natural. One of the most important ideas this week is the difference between what a character wants and what the social system trains a person to become. Naturalism is very interested in how a system defines value, work, and even what counts as being a real person. Here's the key idea. In this framework, money is treated like stored energy. That means value is linked to the ability to do work. The system shapes how people see themselves. Money equals value. Work equals worth. If you're not productive, you become expendable. The characters Minnie and Hanson from the story are used to illustrate industrial subjectivity. In the story, Carrie isn't treated like family, she's treated like an expense. If she doesn't contribute, she doesn't belong. In physics, entropy denotes the tendency towards disorder, where energy becomes less usable. Naturalist stories often follow the same pattern: order, disruption, decline, and then loss. This is called an entropic trajectory. Everything breaks down over time. Here's the discussion question I want you to hold while you read. Where does the text invite you to feel sympathy for the character, and where does it keep you at a distance? In other words, when does the narration pull you close to the person's struggle, and when does it describe them like a problem the system is sorting out? Please use this comparison table as a quick way to build evidence-based connections across the two texts. Instead of trying to remember everything at once, focus on one force at a time and ask a simple question. What is shaping the character's choices? And how does the narration make that shaping feel inevitable? This concludes our presentation. As always, if you have questions, reach out either during office hours, by email, or via discussion board with your classmates. All right, bye-bye.